Have you got your word with you this morning? Yes. Awesome. If you're waving your phone at me, that's not a pass. This is the word. Hey, let's be intentional to be a church who brings the word of God in paper form with us, hey. Because we're modeling to children, we're modeling to young people, we're modeling to new Christians what it means to live by the word of God. And when we have it in person, it says, hey, we take this seriously. I'm not just going to pull out my phone because my phone carries all sorts of other random things that really don't need to take priority. But this needs to take priority. So let's be a church who bring our Bible to church. We can open it together and read together. How does that sound? A few murmuring. Sounds good. You'll catch on with me. Come on. We're modeling. We get the privilege of modeling this. It should be a priority in our lives. All right, that's a whole nother sermon. Maybe I'll preach on that next year. All right. So last week we started our series on missions on the Horizon Project. It's an invitation to every believer. And if you're new here with us this morning, now firstly, you're very welcome. And we're glad that you can be with us. But the Horizon Project is our missions arm for Generosity Church. Why don't we call it GC Missions? Because we have other churches and other organisations aside from Generosity Church that partner with us. And we want to be able to include a broad range of people in it. So we call it the Horizon Project. Mission is for every believer. Mission isn't a trip. It's not an event. It's not something that we just add on to into our lives if we feel like it. Mission is our purpose. Mission should be our lifestyle. And Jesus is counting on us to continue what he began, to live out his mission every single day. And last week, Samuel shared with us about the commandment and the invitation for us to go to Jerusalem, Judea, to the ends of the earth, and how God calls every believer to be a part of that. And today we're going to unpack that a little bit more. Let's turn to Matthew chapter 9. If you have this, you can turn along too. If you have your phones, you can as well, of course, and we always like to display on the screen. We're jumping in at verse 36. When Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest field." Now, if you've been around generosity for a little while, you will have heard a couple of little slogans. Everyday people, if you know it, say along with me, everyday people having an eternal impact for our extraordinary God. And another catch cry that we say alongside the Horizon Project is together creating change that remains. They're nice slogans, but they're not just nice slogans. That's who we are. And this is the invitation to every single person. But at the heartbeat of it all is compassion. Have you ever been in a situation where you have just noticed things and been a part of it and gone, I've got to do something about that. That is not okay on my watch. Many, many years ago, I went to India and I was in my early 20s. And it was Caleb and I, and we went to a place called Salem. And we had a church there, and we went there to preach in this beautiful home church. And in this part of Salem that we went to, it was the slum district. And I don't know about you, if you haven't seen that in person before, but you've seen all the video footage and movies and that sort of thing, it's pretty confronting when you see it. This is some people's reality. This is how they live. This is how they exist. And here I am in this township of Salem, in this shanty town, slums, dirt, mess, low education, if any education, the lowest of low castes and low poverty. It smells because they don't have education around, garbage systems and all of the sanitary systems. It's an assault on every single sense. It's a sensory overload. And for me in my early 20s, it was the first time I had ever encountered anything like that. And it took my breath away. And we were in this home, Caleb's preaching, and the home churches gathered, and the room would have been not even the size of this stage, and every single space was taken up with people squeezed in like sardines. The windows were open so people on the outside could hear what was happening and see what was happening. And our friends who were with me, who are our hosts, Dr. Esther leant over to me and she says, she's a beautiful Indian lady, and she says, "Don't touch the walls." And I'm like, "What?" Don't touch the walls. They were covered in bed bugs. And I'm thinking, I thought bed bugs can only be in beds. But no, they were everywhere. Because it's not because people don't care. They're not educated. They don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And here I am sitting in this tiny concrete room, squished in with people who have done their best to put on their Sunday clothes, but let's face it, probably only have 2 sets of clothing for the week. And I'm just immersed in it. And I'm sitting there going, nah, not on my watch. While I am breathing and I am alive, I will take up God's invitation to Jerusalem, to Judea, to the ends of the earth. I will do everything that is within me to do something about this. And there was another story that I want to share with you. Another time we were in India, and they had this bunch of young adults who would come to know Jesus. And again, they're from slum areas, very poor, low education. But brokenness had gone. Jesus had come and filled them with so much hope and love and restored their life and showed them, hey, even though your physical situation might dictate that you need to grow up poor, that you're not educated, that you don't matter, Jesus says something else. And so these young men, this whole bunch of them were being baptized, and some of them had waited 6 months for Pastor Caleb to come to India because they just wanted Pastor Caleb to baptize them. And so here we are in these baptisms, and it was incredible seeing the step of faith going to a whole nother level. But these young men, because of the situation they'd grown up in, they'd never been immersed in water, like never. Their late teens, early 20s. They'd only ever had a bath out of a bucket. And so here's Caleb baptizing them, and there's this one young man, he's gone under, but he's starting to freak out. He's panicking because it's a whole new experience for him. And so Caleb thought, I've got to bring him back up. But his forehead didn't go under. He didn't go underwater. And so for some people, they're like, no, you had to be fully immersed. And it's okay, because there's a whole other situation going on in the background for him. It's okay, just a small part of his body didn't get immersed. But there's an old grandma, she's grandma of the village, and she's got her walking stick, and she's sitting at the front. She starts banging the floor. No, he hasn't gone all the way under. Put him back under. And so Caleb's like, oh no, we've got to put him back under. And so Caleb's putting him back under, and he's freaking out again because he's like, no, I don't like the fully immersed feeling. And so it was just, you can imagine it, right? Water's going everywhere, and this young man's freaking out, and the grandma's happy because, right, he's finally fully under. And the senior pastor, Indian senior pastor, he's laughing about it all. But those situations might happen, hey. But it was the fact that this beautiful young man from homes of brokenness and poverty and devastation were here being baptized, taking steps in their faith. And it doesn't matter if his forehead didn't go underwater, because it's what was happening in his heart and his life. And we got to be a part of that. We got to see that. We got to be part of the story. God's story is not finished. We are all invited to be a part of it. We read that Jesus had compassion. He had compassion. They were harassed. They were helpless. He had compassion on them. His heart was moved for them. That's where mission begins. And it's not with guilt. It's not with obligation, but with compassion. Jesus looked at their pain and his heart was moved. And the verse says the harvest wasn't the problem. The harvest was ready. The problem was the workers. The workers were few. And church, let's not be that kind of people where we say about our church, workers aren't ready. No, we have a job to do. Let's be accepting the invitation, putting our hands up, saying, yeah, I'll be part of that. I'm going to move forward into that, and I'm going to be part of creating change that remains. It's not about lack of opportunity. The reality is it's a lack of willingness. Compassion is what turns willingness into action. Bill Hybel says, you've never locked eyes with someone who didn't matter to God. You know, every single person in this room matters. Every single person in your community, in our neighbourhood matters. You know, my natural disposition, unfortunately, is to have a very critical bent. And I have to be really, really intentional to make sure that doesn't rise up inside of me, because who knows, that's not a pretty side of people, criticism. I have to be careful in the way that I view the world and my conversations, how I see people, even though I don't even know their background. I can make a judgment call. What? I don't have the right to do that. And a couple of years ago, this thing of being critical was really rising it up a little bit, too much more than it should. And God challenged me on it. And I just went, okay, Jesus, I pray this every day. Help me to see people through your eyes. How do you see people? What have you got on their life? Help me see that. Help me be a part of the picture of drawing that out. Help me to come alongside people and help them point them to you. Because people matter, and I want to see people through the eyes of Jesus, no matter where they come from, no matter their background, no matter if they're rich or they're wealthy or they're educated or they're not. They matter, and we have an invitation to be a part of bringing Jesus and the hope of him into the lives of everyday people. You have never locked eyes with someone who doesn't matter to God. The teenager sitting alone at lunch. The exhausted mum juggling 3 kids at the checkout. The co-worker who always laughs on the outside, but on the inside they are breaking apart. The child in Nepal who walks mountain trails just to try and get to school. The pastor's family in a remote village, faithfully serving even when resources are scarce. The young girl learning how to stay safe from human trafficking. Those in desperate need of medical attention but don't have the means to make the day-long trip nor the funds to pay for the medical treatment. They all matter to God. And if they matter to him, they should matter to us as well. True compassion doesn't have borders. True compassion moves us beyond what's familiar, beyond our own comfort, beyond our convenience. It reminds us that the love of God is just as real for the neighbour across the street as it is for the child across the other side of the world. And true compassion, it starts right here with us, with our families, with our neighbourhoods, with our community. And it stretches across cultures, across nations, and that's why we do what we do through the Horizon Project. And for some of you, you might be asking, well, what exactly do we do? In a nutshell, we show that every person matters. We have a children's welfare centre that our beautiful Michelle and Mamta started over 20 years ago, and they're with us in Bathurst for a season, but their hearts are still back there. We have Generosity Church campuses, 14 at the moment, and we are reaching unreached people groups. We do medical camps in remote areas where people don't have access to modern day medicine. Sometimes just a simple antibiotic is all they need, but they cannot access it. We take teams to Nepal on missions. So many great things that we do that you can be a part of. I don't have time to go into it all today, but you can watch the story continue to unfold. You can check out the website. Compassion doesn't just say, oh, that sucks, I feel for you. Compassion says, I will step in for you. I will advocate for you. I will give the voiceless a voice. That's what compassion says. In Colossians 3:12, we read, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience." In Peter chapter 3, verse 8, "Finally, all of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble." I don't know about you, but I don't think it gets more simple or clearer than that. In everyday language, I think most of us have the capacity to take that on. Be compassionate, be sympathetic, love one another. Take it on. Through the Horizon Project, compassion looks like children being educated and growing up in safety and love. Families finding hope as they receive practical support and spiritual encouragement. Churches being strengthened, pastors equipped, resources shared, communities impacted, communities reached that were once considered unreachable, communities hearing about the name of Jesus, the gospel of Jesus, that had never ever heard about who is this Jesus. The gospel being shared with people who have never heard. And what's compassion? That's what compassion looks like when it moves from a feeling to an action. That's what happens when everyday people like you and I say, I want to be a part of creating change that remains. There's this beautiful boy at our Children's Welfare Centre in Nepal. And he was born in 2003. And when he was very small, his parents died and he had no family to take care of him. He was unloved. He was not noticed. People didn't even care that he was there. To them, he didn't exist. He was just another child there. No one to love him. He didn't have identity papers. He didn't have a birth certificate. He did not exist as far as everyone around him were concerned. And in 2009, he came across the path of Michelle Amumta, and they brought him in. Can we please have that first photo, Nath? His name is Jonathan. And they brought him in to Mumta Childcare Trust family. And Michelle Amumta, because you gotta, if you haven't met Michelle Amumta and heard their story, you need to grab them and talk to them. They have an incredible story. And they took Jonathan into their family. And to Jonathan, sorry, I'm going to get teary. Michelle Amumta are mum and dad to Jonathan. He is all he's ever known. They are all he's ever known as parents. And they took him in. They loved on him. They showed him what it meant to be part of a family. And in 2010, we had Australian families sponsoring him. And only until recently has that family stopped sponsoring him, not because they moved on, but because Jonathan doesn't need it anymore. And we'll get to that bit in a minute. He's now 22. Amazing. And I just remember so many times going to Nepal and this sweet small boy, Jonathan, he's so happy. He never used to be. He's loved. He never used to be. He's cared for. He never used to be. And I would just watch him and he would follow Michelle around like Michelle's little shadow. He could not get enough of this incredible father figure in his life. And Michelle Amumta would just shower him with love and compassion, showing him the love of Jesus. This is compassion in action. Jonathan grew up through school, through church, knowing he is loved, knowing he matters, knowing he has a God-given purpose that God has for him, that he wants him to live out. And it took a couple of years for Michelle Amumta and our social worker in Nepal to sort out the process to get him his birth certificate, his citizenship papers, his passport. Imagine that, 2 years. Not just a few conversations, it's travelling back and forth to the village he came from, it's talking to the village elders, it's talking to the government officials, going through this process, that process. For us, you fill in a bit of paperwork and 4 weeks later, there's your birth certificate. Even that in itself is a huge testimony to God's grace upon Jonathan. He's 22 years old. Can we please have the second photo, Nath? He was sponsored through his tertiary education. He's received a diploma in computer engineering. This boy that no one wanted to love him. No one noticed him. And he's now this young man passionate about serving Jesus. He's passionate about creating change that remains in his community. He's recently successfully transitioned to independent living, which is why he's no longer requiring sponsorship from his Australian family. He's financially independent, running his own business in video and graphics design and editing. And on top of that, he's a big part of Generosity Church campus in Kathmandu. And he'll be graduating from the School of Worship really soon. He's a talented musician, leads the church in worship, and just growing more and more every day. And this is why we do what we do through the Horizon Project. This is why it matters that we pick up the invitation that Jesus has given out to us. This is why on my watch, on Generosity Church's watch, not on my watch, will we let those things pass us by. We have so much work to do. And all of us have the invitation to be a part of it. Let's stand together, church. This is compassion in motion. This is what happens when faith becomes practical, when love becomes active, when a church says yes to the daily invitation of Jesus. And here's the thing. You actually don't have to set foot in Nepal to carry out that compassion. Every prayer whispered, every dollar given, every moment of encouragement, it all builds to something eternal. You're part of the story that God is writing. You have the invitation to be part of it. It reaches from our homes all the way to the Himalayas. You get to be compassion, living in action, helping to create change that remains. And this is why, as a church, we take Jesus' invitation and commandment to share the gospel through Judea, Jerusalem, to the ends of the earth. We take it seriously. While we are alive, while we are breathing, while we have capacity, it is game on. We are focused. We give a voice to the voiceless. So, church, here's the daily invitation of Jesus. Not just to feel compassion, but to live compassion. Not just to notice the need, but to step into it. Will you pray with compassion for the nations? Will you give with compassion to support the Horizon Project? Will you love with compassion the people that are already in your world? Mission isn't an event. It's compassion in motion. Every day, everywhere, for every people. Mission is not for the few, it's for all of us. Mission is not an event, it's a lifestyle. Mission is not temporary, it's eternal. We are everyday people, moved by compassion, having an eternal impact for our extraordinary God, and together we get to be a part of creating change that remains. The daily invitation is here to you, church. Will you say yes? Will your RSVP to Jesus today be yes? Will you let the emotion of compassion go towards action? We're going to sing through this chorus. Everything I am, I give it to you, God. Yes, I'm saying yes. I will let the emotion of compassion be built into action. It's not, oh, yes, if you can feel like it, or if you can be bothered, or if you've got the energy. No, that is who we are. That is who God has called us to be. We're invited, we're commanded, and it is up to us whether we put our RSVP in today and say, yes, I'm in. While I'm alive, while I'm breathing, I will be a voice, give a voice to the voiceless. So come on, church. Will you just for a moment, let's worship our heart out and say, yes, Jesus, consider this my RSVP. What's